Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be discovering your purpose, passion, and mission. Well, I've got an email here from a viewer, and he's worked several different things in his life, and he feels like he's never really found what pushes his buttons. He had a business for a while, and that ended up failing, not so much because it was a bad business, but because he just had a bad plan. A strategic planner who was very successful. He was a turnaround expert. I remember one of his companies, when he took over, they were grossing $3 to $5 million a year, and in under 5 years, he took that company to a $60 million a year company. And one of the things that he said, which I personally found to be so true, not only in my own life, but in the lives of many, many clients that I've coached over the years, is that there's no such thing as a bad idea, only bad plans. And most people, whether they're starting their own business or they're pursuing a career, they don't really have a good plan of how they want to get somewhere. They kind of have an idea of what they want, but they don't really have a compelling enough reason why, and they don't have a good plan to approach things. And since most people tend to do more to avoid pain than they'll do to gain pleasure, when something gets difficult, or when something is perceived to be difficult or hard, or it's going to take a really long time, they just give up and move away because they're afraid of failure. And so what they try to do is they insulate themselves from really taking any real big risk, whether it's in a career or starting their own business, and so they never reach their full potential. And you're going to see that. And like somebody that spent most of their life working at things that they hate, or things that are not that exciting or compelling to them because they don't think it's in the cards, they literally over the years and the decades will emotionally condition themselves to expect life to be that way. In other words, they expect that life is going to struggle, life is going to suck. And because that becomes their perception and their belief system, they're consciously and subconsciously going to act in ways that are congruent with that particular limiting belief. And over many years, they start to think and act, and their life matches that belief without them even realizing it. And so it becomes very hard for them to make changes in their life as they get older, to take corrective action in their career or starting that business that they've always wanted to. And that's what I see a lot of in this particular guy's email. And oftentimes when I talk to people like this and I'm doing a phone session with them, I'll start asking them, what is it that you really want to do? What are you passionate about? They go, oh, I don't know. Well, that is a total bullshit answer. When somebody says, I don't know, what's really going on is deep down they know, but there's so much fear and apprehension of even considering what they want to do that they don't even consider it. And so the easy, comfortable answer that keeps them in their comfort zone, that keeps them from taking any kind of risk is, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I'm passionate about. Because they have so emotionally conditioned themselves over many years that doing something that they really love and they really have a passion for is just simply not in the cards. It's actually something that is ridiculous and out of the question. Therefore, they won't even consider it. So it's easy to just go, gee, I don't know. And so they continue to act in ways that are consistent with being mediocre, being unhappy, being unfilled in their career and their purpose in life, and they never reach their full potential. And when you live your life doing things that are not fun and not enjoyable, and you believe that life is going to be a struggle, you're not going to take as good a care of your body, you're not going to eat as healthy, you're not going to exercise as much, you're going to be a lot more filled with stress. And when you're fearful and you're angry and you're stressed out all the time, you're literally causing your body chemistry to change and become more acidic. This is going to break your body down and wear it out quicker. And once you eventually lose hope that happiness is a moving target, success is a moving target, it's an elusive goal and you're never going to get there, it's like once you give up hope, you're on a quick path to an early grave. And it's tragic. I see it in people's faces all the time when I walk around in public. You just see they've given up and they're just going through the motions in life. And that's a tragedy. We're built for success. We're given all the tools that we need, but the biggest obstacle to most people's success is this thing that's between our ears and our beliefs that are in it. It's like the analogy I've used many times. You got to think of your brain as like a computer, and your belief system is like the software. Well, if you've got crappy software running on your computer, that's going to equal a life full of misery, unhappiness, and never getting to experience true success. And also it affects your relationships as well. It's really hard to have a great relationship with somebody, not only your intimate relationships, but your friendships. If you're unhappy, if you're depressed, and you feel like life is just a fucking drag, and you're just trying to get from Monday through Friday just so you can get to the weekend and have a little bit of space. So I got a quote that I wrote on this particular topic, and then we're going to go through his email. And the quote says, "Life is too short to spend it working at something you hate or do not enjoy only because it pays your bills. People who choose careers or who start businesses doing something they really believe in, love, and are passionate about will work much harder than their fellow employees or competitors. Repetition is the mother of skill. When you repetitively work at improving your focus, skills, talents, and expertise by consistently applying yourself at maximum effort level, you will outdo and exceed all others around you who can't match your passion and effort level. When you can outshine and out-hustle all others in your field, you will maximize your income earning potential, success, happiness, and fulfillment in life." I was just watching a football game, and one of the teams that was playing was the Denver Broncos, which has Peyton Manning as a quarterback. And he's one of the best statistical quarterbacks to ever play the game, if not the best. And there's 2 or 3 players that are on that team that are starters, and all 3 of those guys, none of them were drafted. And they had a big chip on their shoulder thinking, hey, I deserve to be playing. I deserve to be in the NFL. But you got other guys that are high draft picks. There's been plenty of number 1 draft picks that have been taken over the years that they get drafted number 1 and they get a nice big contract, and then 2 years later, they're completely out of the league. And these guys have all the talent. And they have all the God-given gifts, skills, and talents necessary to be really incredible in the National Football League. And what happens? They're out of the league in a year or 2. And then you got other players that never got drafted. Nobody looked and thought that they were good enough, yet they go to training camp and they apply themselves and they out-hustle, they out-study, and they outdo people that are starting out with much bigger contracts than they are because they got a chip on their shoulder, because they really have a passion. They really believe in their hearts, and they choose that they deserve to be there. And they fight, and they focus, and they work at perfecting their skills and their talents until they become good enough and they shine enough to get recognized by the coaches. And after their 3 or 4 years of their rookie deal is up, they get these big, huge, multi-million-dollar contracts that are worth tens of millions of dollars. And yet, supposedly, they didn't have the same level of natural skills and talent and ability as guys who were drafted in the first and second rounds, but yet a year or 2 later are completely out of the league. And why does that happen? Because there's a lack of passion, there's a lack of focus, and there's a lack of belief in oneself. And that is, you can look at that and see that in any professional sport, because I coach a lot of guys that play in the NBA, the Major League Baseball, that play in the NFL football, and even soccer players, which they call it football, in Europe. They're really great players, they're really great actors, they're really great CEOs. They have a passion, they have a hunger, they have a fucking burning desire. They believe that they were put on this earth to do something great, and they relentlessly focused on figuring out what that is and doing things and moving towards things that are really exciting and really compelling. Because like I said in the quote, when you're doing something that's really compelling and you really have a passion for, you can outdo people and become more successful than people that are smarter than you, that went to better schools than you, they came from a better family than you, they have more money and more opportunity than you. Just because of your passion, your focus at your heart. It's amazing what we can accomplish when we direct our focus to something that we really love and we really enjoy. So with that being said, let's go through his email. It's not a very long one. He says, "Hey Corey, I'm 32 and I have not found what I'm good at in the workplace or what I should be doing. I've had a small business before. I put insulation in homes, but it didn't last very long. I did enjoy making what little money that I did earn when I did do this, but I ran into too many problems that I could either not figure out how to fix or have the money to keep doing it. So in essence, you failed because you had a bad plan. And if you got a bad plan, eventually you're just not going to be that successful. Eventually you run out of capital, and you run out of money, and you run out of time, and then you got to go get a job working for somebody else. But in this particular case, you could do things for cheaper, and so you end up doing insulating homes either after hours on the weekends and building a business until you earn enough money to where you can leave whatever full-time job that you're working at. If you're really passionately committed to doing insulation at homes, then you got to have to work a regular job earning a wage so you can pay your bills while you build your business on the side, and you study other successful people who are already succeeding and working full-time at what you want to do, instead of going out and trying to reinvent the wheel. But if you're not passionate about it, in other words, on a scale of 1 to 10, if it's not an absolute 10, if you don't absolutely love insulating homes and really enjoy it and have a passion for it, you're never going to do what it takes in order to become really successful at it. And notice what he says here, I also questioned at the time if I should have been doing that kind of work. Well, when I approached the construction industry, the mortgage industry, the real estate industry, that was something that I wanted to do from the time I was a teenager. And when I looked at what I love, in other words, things that on a scale of 1 to 10 were emotionally compelling, simple things to me. It's like, what did I love about construction? I love the smell of fresh cut lumber. I love the sound of drywall screw guns driving screws in to hold the drywall up. I love the sound of hammers. I love the sound of backup alarms. I love watching big equipment, cranes, tower cranes, front end loaders, bulldozers, backhoes. I love watching that kind of equipment. I love driving by construction sites and seeing something go up. And when I worked in the construction industry, one of the things that I really loved about it was seeing something on paper that was drawn up and designed by architects and engineers, and then the process of building that and seeing that in the field go from paper and imagination to eventually existing in the real world. That was exciting to me. And when I drive by construction sites now, I see things I get to watch. Like where I live in downtown Orlando, there's a lot of construction projects. And when I got time, I always ride by every couple of weeks and watch, and I'll stop and I'll look and I'll just watch how things are being put together. That's exciting. That's compelling to me. I love to build. I love helping other people. I love taking things that I know how to do and sharing them with other people's lives. Like when I build a custom home, even if it's a home that might be a home that I'm not actually going to want to live in, I'm going to make that home nice enough. I'm going to put extra money into that home that other builders wouldn't do, just to make it really nice. Like I remember my very first house, my very first foreclosure property that I bought, it was only like a $65,000 house. And I remember I put a brass kick plate on the front door, and I spent $150 for a really nice brass custom door pull for the front door. I got a nice brass door knocker, a nice brass keyhole where you could look through it and see who was at your front door. I remember I put these hunter green shutters around the windows at the front. I replaced a couple of the windows that were in the front just because it really made it look good. And I remember part of the carport was kind of hanging down at an angle. I paid a carpenter to jack that part of the roof up and hammer nails into the beams and straighten it out, because it affected the way the thing looked from the curb. When the roof kind of curved down like that, it looked like there was something wrong with it. But when it was straightened, and with the shutters and the new paint and the new windows and the extra couple $100 that I put just to make the door really pop, I remember I was sitting at the closing table with the buyer that bought it. And I remember that was one of the things that she said that sold her in the house when she walked up, and here's this $65,000 house. It's got a $150, $200 really nice high-end brass door pull on it that you would see on a $500,000, $700 million home. And that really made her feel like she was really getting something of value. And then when she walked in the house, there was brand new tile, the kitchen had been redone, brand new carpet, it smelled new, there was a new AC system in, all the air diffusers in each room, that everything was new. And so it looked good, the light fixtures were new, the doors were new. I mean, it's just so everywhere she walked in the property, I had put that. I even seeded the backyard and the front yard, and so the grass had grown in where there was mostly weeds when I bought this house. And so by the time I put it in the market, I got a contract on it within 2 weeks. Now there were other investors that were buying, fixing, and selling houses in the same neighborhood, and most of them, their houses took many months to sell. But mine, it was like the first or second time that somebody had showed that property, I got a contract on it right away. Why? Because it was nicer than everybody else's property that I was competing against. Why? Because I put that extra tender loving care. Because if I was in that income level and living in that house, I would have comfort that I had the nicest house in the whole neighborhood. And that's the way I look at things. That's where passion comes in. That's where really loving what you do comes in, because you'll do those extra things. You'll spend the extra time or the extra money to make things really great. When you look at like computer products, you look at like what Apple does versus everybody else. Apple stuff is made out of nice, expensive aluminum. The products feel firm. They're different. They're beautiful. They're well put together. It's like every little detail. Versus somebody else's, it might be a couple $100 cheaper. It's all made out of plastic. It's a little flimsier. You just feel like you're getting a better value product when you buy an Apple computer product versus somebody else's. And their whole company is focused. Their whole culture is focused on creating the absolute nicest, highest end quality product that they can do. And that comes from a passion and a love. And that was something that one of the founders, Steve Jobs of Apple, instilled within the company culture. And even though he's passed away, the way he approached building things and the way he approached building a company, he really loved what he was doing. He really had a passion for it. And he couldn't imagine himself doing anything other than what he was doing. And that's why when you're starting a business or you're starting a career and you don't necessarily know how you ultimately are going to work up to being a CEO, if you're going to be an employee of a company, when you really love what you're doing, when you really believe in the service, when you really believe in the product, when you really enjoy serving and adding value to people's lives, you'll do those little things that every other employee that you're competing against or every other business owner that you're competing against simply won't do. Why? Think about it. If you're doing something on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10 for you, compared to your competition, it's maybe a 7 or an 8, or most of the people who are working at it because they can earn good money at it, you'll just simply do it better. You'll work harder at it because it won't seem like work to you. So he says, on top of that, and listen to what he says here, this is interesting. On top of that, I went into that business, the insulation business, only because I did not like the job I had at the time and could not find anything else, nor did I know where to go. So I quit and tried something different. It's great that you tried something different, but at the end of the day, you really were doing it because, I'm going to be the best home insulator out there. And so that's why it's so important. It's to figure out what you love doing, what you're really passionate about doing. If it's not a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, you need to keep looking. And the idea is like when you make, and I do this with any of my clients that have asked me to, when I'm doing a phone session with them, to try to figure out what it is they really love and they really have a passion for. We might sit, some guys we go through things and it might come up 15 or 20 things that are a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. They might have 3 or 4 careers that they've worked, and I ask them, what things did you really love and did you really enjoy in those particular careers? We'll make a list. Other people might pick out 6 or 7 things that they really love and they have a passion that they've experienced. And so if you've got, say, 10 things on your list that are a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 that you really love to do, when you're picking a business or you're picking a job, you have to make sure that all of those needs, in other words, all of those things that are a 10 as far as being emotionally compelling to you on a scale of 1 to 10, if you've got 10 of those things on your list, any job or business that you go into has to meet consistently all 10 of those, what I call driving force needs. Because if you've got 10 things that you really love and you're passionate about, and you go to work at a job that's maybe only 3 or 5 of them are fulfilled consistently, you're going to have 5 things that you're really passionate about that are not going to be consistently done by you on a daily basis. So really, in essence, when you look at it, only 50% of what you're doing in your job, career, your business is going to be met consistently. Therefore, it's obvious that you're only going to be fulfilled 50% of the time when you're working your job. So the more of those things that you're most passionate about that you can do in your life's work, the more fulfilled you're going to be, the happier you're going to be, and the harder you're going to work at it. But if you're not consistently working at a job or a career or a business where all the things that you really love and that are most important to you are done day in and day out, you're never going to reach your full potential. You're always going to feel like something is missing. You're always going to feel like, God, this is great in some ways, but it's not all the way. And so when I'm doing a lot of career coaching with people, it's figuring out what they love and what they're most passionate about and getting everything out on paper. Like I said, the average is somewhere around 7 to 10. So when I work with somebody, they usually come up with 7 to 10 things that on a scale of 1 to 10, they're a 10. And so if something's a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10, that's not a love. That's not a passion. And so if you're sitting there, it's like, well, where do I start? How do I figure out what I really love to do? Let's go through, because there's some things that he mentions here, and we'll build upon those. So he says, looking back, I still don't know if I should try something like that again. Well, only if you really love it and you really have a passion for it. He says, I've never been passionate about any kind of work. It was just something that you did to get paid. And therein lies the rub. That's your problem. You're focusing on doing things to make money to earn a paycheck. But since the passion is lacking, you never worked hard enough and you never really pushed yourself enough to become great at it. That's why it's so important to understand what you love, what you enjoy. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's a 10? In other words, a 10 being I really love it and I can't imagine doing anything else more fulfilling than this, and obviously 1 being you totally hate it. He says, I have no hobbies and I don't really enjoy anything in my spare time except maybe travel. Okay, so you got one thing that we know you love. You love traveling. On a scale of 1 to 10, if traveling is a 10, great. Write that down. What else do you love? That at least is a starting point. And if something is not as compelling to you that you love to enjoy in life, maybe making money at a business. Maybe you enjoyed making money and having your own business, the freedom it gave you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, having freedom in your work is important to you. And it might not mean necessarily that you're supposed to be an entrepreneur. Maybe you're better off as being an independent contractor, maybe like a salesperson, or say working in real estate or something, some kind of commission type of job where you can set your own hours and work when you want to work. So the more things that you can do in your job that are your core needs, that are your core values, that are your core passions, the happier you're going to be, the harder you're going to work at it, and the better that you're going to become at it over time. He says, I pretty much work 12 hours a day in my work experience. And now I am in the same situation all over again. So in other words, you're working your ass off just to earn a living, and you're working your ass off at something that's not that exciting. And so you're working, say, 5 days a week, 12 hours a day. That's 60 hours a week. You're coming home at night, you're dead fucking tired because you're forcing yourself to work hard at something that you don't really like. That's going to absolutely suck the life force and suck the energy out of you. It's going to be next to impossible to become really great at that. Plus have any energy left over where you're willing to work at a business on the side, or where you're willing to go to school part-time at night to learn something, or to get a degree where you can go get a career started in something you really love and you have a passion for. He says, I'd like to have my own business or just be self-employed, but I still have no idea what I should be doing after searching for a very long time. Well, again, forget about searching for the job right now. What you got to do is make a list of the things that you love and enjoy most. And obviously the one thing that you did mention in your email so far is that you love traveling. So build upon that. He says, I've tried things like DISC tests, career counselors, but none of that has helped. And I was wondering if you had any tips, literature, website advice to give, etc. Well, I've done a number of articles in I've probably got 4 or 5 where I've done focusing on your purpose and discovering your purpose. I'll put a link in the actual article on my website where you can check all those out. But the important thing is, if you're sitting there watching this video and you're going, God, I don't know what I want to do, you got to start with one thing that you love more than anything in life. Like a lot of guys that I talk to are like, I like working out. I like eating healthy. And so sometimes when we sit down and we make a list, there might be 6 or 7 things that they really love, which is eating healthy, nutrition, losing weight, getting in shape, giving other people advice at the gym, coaching them, mentoring them. And I've talked to a number of guys over the years, and girls, that they really love personal training and they really love personal fitness, and they take good care of their own bodies themselves already. But yet they never considered going into personal training because they're like, oh, I got to get a degree and I got to do this, I got to do that. And not every state, not every country requires you to have a degree to become a personal trainer and work at a gym. Sometimes you need a license, sometimes you don't. It's like depending on the area that you're at. But think about it. if you wrote down and say you had 6 or 7 things that you really loved and all revolved around personal training, well, you can go to school for physical therapy. You can go to school for personal fitness or for nutrition. There's several things that you can go into. And so the key is that if you look at any of those potential career paths, are you going to fulfill all of the needs that you've written down that on a scale of 1 to 10 are a 10? And if not, you need to keep searching. The key is to get your list, and once you've got your list of at least 4 or 5 things that you really love and enjoy in life, then you can start looking for a career or a business to go into, because you got to make sure that whatever career or business that you go into, it's going to fulfill all of those things you've written down that you really love and you really enjoy. I had a client a couple months ago, I remember I was talking to him. He was working in the corporate world. I think there were 8 or 10 things that he had written down. Well, he loved the sales part of things. He loved meeting face-to-face. He loved meeting people's objections to the sale, but he didn't like prospecting. He didn't like cold calling. He didn't like the process of setting up an appointment. He liked management. He liked doing presentations in his company. And when we looked at all those 8 or 10 things, he was basically 50 to 60% of his job was meeting his driving force needs, and the other half of his driving force needs were not being met, and he was making really good money. And so what we looked at was him making a lateral move in the company, and there were positions in his company where he could travel, which was something that was really important to him, and he also could do seminars and trainings where he was teaching other people things that he was passionate about, as well as working in sales. And so at the end of the call, what we ended up coming to the conclusion, or he ended up coming to the conclusion, was there were lateral moves that he could make in his company and work in a different position where he could consistently meet all 7 or 8 of his driving force needs, the things that he was most passionate about. Because what he was currently working at, he was only doing maybe 4 or 5 of the 7, 8, or 9 things he was really most passionate about. So he's basically only 50% of his passions were being met in his career. And so when we ended the call, it was basically he was going to try to make a lateral move in his company. And if they were not willing to do that, if they weren't willing to give him the opportunity, because sometimes that happens. If you can't make a lateral move, then the other option is you got a good paying job, keep the job, while you look for a company where you can go take a similar position for them, where you can get a job where you're actually all 7 or 8 of those driving force needs are met consistently. And so that's what the takeaway was. First step was, because the easiest thing is he's already working for a company, was to try to make a lateral move. And if that didn't work out, then it meant if he stayed working at his job, he's not going to have his needs fulfilled and met. And so therefore, the best option then would have been to start looking at other companies while he's still working a steady job. And once he found the right one, then he can put in his 2 weeks notice, leave on good terms, and go work at a position that he really loves. That's how you can go from working at something that's a 5 or a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10 to something that's a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, is by making sure all of your driving force needs are met. But if you'd like to get my help personally, to help work with you, if you're having some mental blocks or some limiting beliefs or some fears that are kind of getting in the way of your passions and figuring out what your mission, your purpose is, go to my website, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and follow the instructions for booking a paid phone coaching session with yours truly. And I will talk to you soon.